Hello, hello, and welcome back to Bearing Birth, a birth story podcast highlighting the emotional impact of birth, the immediate postpartum period, and the years beyond. I'm Sophie, a perinatal mental health therapist.
And I'm Jordan, a doula specializing in postpartum support. Today we are sharing part 2 of a delightful conversation we had with our guest Ryan. Ryan is a father to a 1-year-old daughter and husband to one of our previous guests, Cailley. Her episodes were posted back in January.
Hopefully you have listened to part 1 already, where Ryan talks about his experience with miscarriage as he and his wife unfortunately lost their first pregnancy and then pretty soon thereafter became pregnant again.
In this episode, Ryan shares his perspective of their whirlwind of a labor and homebirth story and how he navigated through difficult emotions.
Ryan also talks about how he prepared himself for fatherhood and how he and his wife compromised on a birth plan.
It was really fun to sit down with Ryan because he really is well equipped with dad jokes, as his wife Cailley mentioned helped get her through pregnancy. We laughed so much in this episode with Ryan, and we really appreciated his thoughtful and gentle nature and his approach to fatherhood.
Thank you so much to my friends Ryan and Cailley for coming on the podcast and sharing both of your perspectives. It's been really special and meaningful to get to experience parenthood together with people like you and just down the street from me.
We hope you enjoy our conversation with Ryan as much as we did. We'll see you next time in October to introduce our next guest. Thanks for listening.
Enjoy.
A doula and a therapist are sitting down to talk about birth. A doula and a therapist are sitting down to talk about birth.
I have no idea how she did it. Like, to finish our birthing story, the reason the hip squeezes and counter pressure didn't work was our midwives came over ready to transfer us. And then they're like, all right, we'll just do a check just to know where we're at when we get to the hospital. And they're like, oh, I see the baby's head. I'm like, oh my God, like
wow.
That. Yeah, she, all right.
So she really was feeling like
she was
to push.
pushing. Yeah. It was like, this is so silly. I should have known. Like, you know, when she was wanting to call her friend or call the midwives, like that was probably transition. That was her doubting her. Like it all clicked at that point. But
it just was further proof that every birth is totally different. And like, there's only so much you can prepare because everybody experiences it so differently.
Yeah, it was astounding. Like she went from 1 to 3 centimeters in like, I don't know, like 20 hours or something. And then 3 to head in like 2 hours. It was just not textbook, but a very welcome surprise.
It was so back and forth. And I remember from her story, there was a moment where you were going to go and you had called to see if you could borrow the car. And then I didn't hear from you. And then it happened. What was that like to have so many different go this way or go that way, just to flip flop like that?
Crazy. Yeah, it was a roller coaster, for lack of a better word. But going back to the last time our midwives were there, it was like 1 a.m. Cailley was 3 centimeters. They were saying like, you know, like they were just starting to think that we might not have the baby at home. So they're like, all right, well, think about transferring care. I think she said, we can either transfer now or I can come by in the morning before work. I think they were like 6 or 7 a.m., something like that. And then you can either transfer then if you haven't progressed. I think at that moment, Cailley was ready to transfer. And I was just like, dude, I felt like such a failure, you know? Like I had done all my homework. And I'm like, it was my job to coach her through this and get her to pushing at home. That was her one. She wanted a home birth. And so it felt really bad. And I was like, all right, how about we stay home, try and rest, and then we'll call the midwives in the morning. Cause like, then we don't have to sleep in a hospital bed. Right. So, and that is what my wife agreed to. And that is when I took my 20 to 30 minute nap. That if you watched or heard my wife's podcast episode, she was, I wouldn't say upset, but surprised maybe to see me sleeping. But
you need sleep.
I had been awake for so long.
Yeah.
I was crashing off a Monster energy drink. And
the hip squeezes take a lot of energy.
Yeah.
It's a lot, but
I mean, you do, it's like for parents. We want parents to fill their cup so they can show up for their kids. I feel like it's the same with partners in birth. You need to be able to like have the energy to continue your support. But I can see both sides.
No, of course. Yeah. And I misread the vibe. I thought she was in early labor. So I'm like, you know, people say you can sleep through early labor contractions. I'm like, let's try and nap. She agreed at the time, but I guess she couldn't nap through it, and I could.
Yeah, maybe that's what it is, that there was a choice that she couldn't make in the moment.
Yeah.
I feel that sometimes with Johnny. It's like, you don't have to make that choice. Or you have the freedom to make a different choice, and it can feel kind of frustrating. I understand both perspectives.
Yeah.
Totally.
For sure. No, it's it's just a funny little quirk of our story. But.
Yeah.
So that was like me convincing her to, or not convincing, us agreeing to wait for the morning. Like that's kind of a low point. And then calling the midwife before 6 or 7, like I wanted to give us that extra hour. So I was kind of like dragging my feet, calling the midwives. I had that rule where if Cailley asked 3 times, I'd take her seriously, which I don't know. I still think it was a good rule, but maybe I should have had a little more grace in the moment. Yeah, I was kind of dragging my feet a little, I think, because I felt a little like a failure, but a little bit like I let her down. So then I think that's when we texted you, and then we were like, we think we need your car. I'm sorry. Because our midwives had a plan, I guess, where they would either transfer Cailley or the baby or something separate. But anyhow, I don't think that's relevant.
I think that's from after the baby was born. If the baby needed support.
Trying to think why we needed your car. I guess because ambulances are expensive. That's the only reason.
Yeah, it's good backup.
But yeah, so we texted you and we were like, all right, I think we'll need that car after all. And sorry for waking you.
No problem.
It's much easier to be woken by a text than to be in labor.
Yeah.
Fair.
I was excited. I was happy to offer the car. Yeah.
Yeah, so then shortly thereafter, no, I guess not that shortly after, like 20, 30 minutes, our midwife showed up and then got the great news that the baby was on their way and we were going to deliver at home. And I think that was such a jump, kind of at like the lowest of the lows to the highest of the highs. So, went in the bathroom, cried a little, collected myself, came out, didn't do hip squeezes, but started gathering all the materials. It was a really fun, hectic hour, I think. Like, it was only an hour from the time that the midwives came to when our baby was delivered.
Wow. That's intense.
It was fun. Yeah, it was like an adrenaline rush. I can't imagine what Cailley felt, but I was, like I said, it was like the highest of the highs. Like after all that we've been through and feeling like we were going to like lose our dream of the home birth, being able to like not only have it come through, but like it's happening now. Like it was great. I think it was such a cathartic hour.
That's great. I feel like it's cool to get your side of it, you in the bathroom. Like we hear lots of stories from the people who their bodies are just going through this intense thing, but like you're going through this intense thing also, just it's very different. Yeah, that's cool. It's cool to hear that it was fun and like exciting. And I can imagine like just the grief and like processing, the quick processing you're trying to do. And like also mentally preparing for this to take who knows how much longer, like a whole other day. And then it's suddenly like, oh, by the way, just kidding, right now.
It's this overwhelm of everything at once.
And then like not knowing, even like when you're at the pushing stage, they say it can take hours. So preparing for that too. I'm like, oh man, I should have had another Red Bull. Like,
So when you went to the bathroom and had a moment to yourself, what were you thinking or doing? Or what was it, just to have privacy and to not put that onto Cailley because she's going through so much of the moment, or just to collect yourself? Or do you have like guides that you check in with? Some people do. Just ask for support.
That's not, no, I think it was just a moment to myself, I guess, because our midwife was running around and didn't want to get in her way. And I think like we had needed, what do they call them? Little pads for birth, and that was in the bathroom, but I had a reason to go in the bathroom, and then I'm like, I'm just going to have an emotional release. It was nice to win one at that moment.
Yeah. So then baby is born and you caught her, right?
I think.
Is that blurry now?
I can't remember. Yeah. So Cailley was on the bed, the pads underneath, and she was kind of down like on all fours, delivering the baby, and the baby came out, and I wasn't prepared for how white the baby would be. And so I saw it halfway out. I was with the midwives. I'm like, what is that? Like, is that an organ? Like, is that Cailley's uterus? And they're like, that's your baby. I was just like, that's not what a human looks like.
Yeah, you don't see that image. You see the newborn after they've been cleaned off or after a few days.
Yeah.
not the real raw stuff.
She was very pale. Yeah. It was crazy. But anyway, then I'm like, okay, I'm ready. But I didn't realize, not to be too graphic, but
It can be as graphic as you want.
the fluids that would expel along with the baby. So I think I was a little sabotaged. I think I caught her. I feel like it was more like me gently guiding her to the bed at that point. I also didn't expect her to weigh as much as she did. So.
She's heavier.
I guess, yeah. I don't know. My brain just wasn't.
It was just all different than what you imagined.
And like, I don't know. I like the idea of catching the baby, but I wasn't like, I need to catch the baby. I'm like, yeah. But in the moment, I'm just like, hell yeah. Like, that's my baby. I want to catch her. But I didn't have much time to prepare, so.
How did she look, like, once she was fully out to you? Like, did she look more like how a baby should look when you could see the whole picture?
It's so interesting. I can't have an objective answer for that because it was all kind of just like feelings, you know. I was like, dang, this is our baby. Like,
yeah.
The one thing I do remember is she had a bit of a cone head because I guess Cailley had gotten not stuck, but pushing a baby is hard. So I guess like the faster you go, the less cone shaped the baby's head will be. But yeah, she had a bit of a cone head, but I can't remember how quick it changes so fast. And you're just like, this is incredible. These babies, man. But yeah, the whole birth experience is objectively, initially I'm like, I don't even know if I want to look like when the baby's coming out. Like there's a lot of things that I was afraid of seeing or like things you can't unsee. But in the moment, I think it's just like, yeah, didn't care. And nothing was weird. I know Cailley was a little self-conscious about the things she thought her body was doing. But I'm like, you're pushing a baby out.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's natural.
Yeah. From what I saw, it was, as good as it could have gone.
That's to be able to see it and then to experience it, so different.
Yeah, it was really difficult too. Our midwives tried to give Cailley a mirror so that she could watch the baby come out. And so she was on her hands and knees and it's like what are you handing
so hard
me?
To
like,
do.
Yeah.
To multitask like that.
Like, I don't need a live stream right now.
I really like how you described it as like it was just all feelings. Because I feel like it's such an intense experience that it makes so much sense that, you're not processing a whole lot in the moment. You're just experiencing it. So I like that.
Yeah, I think that was something I was really surprised about myself. Because I'm a little squeamish. Cailley's like, do you want to watch birth videos to prepare? I'm like, no. Well, what does Netflix have? Like, why are we doing this? This is a Tuesday night.
Of course you would want to watch that. You're a photographer. Did you take pictures or... Oh, yeah. Jordan's also a photographer. I don't know if you mentioned that. Did you take pictures or videos or document it in any way that wasn't just your eyes and...
Not the birth. Our midwives asked if they wanted, like if there's a lull or whatever, like, do you want us to take pictures? And I think Cailley said yeah. So we have a couple pictures of the birth, but I don't know. Something like that. Better to be in the moment. We did a newborn photo shoot a few days later, and oh man, that was a whole thing. I was like Googling how much light I can put on the baby. I know I can't use flash, but yeah, it was a lot of fun at that stage. But I wanted to give her a minute to, not to be rude, babies don't make a great first impression. They gotta clean up a little, comb their hair. So thought we'd give her the best shot. Put
clothes on, maybe. Yeah, so what was it like the first couple of hours, the baby is here, the midwives have left. What was that like together as a family of 3?
So surreal. It's so weird. We had such a long night, so we ended up taking a nap, and it was just, I think when we woke up and it was just the 3 of us, and it was just like, they just let us have this? Like, we don't have to take a test or... sign anything. Like, baby's just ours now. They trust us to keep it alive.
Did it feel like a dream when you woke up? Like, whoa, that just happened a few hours ago?
I don't know. I kept expecting these huge moments. And aside from the physical, the hour that the baby came, every day just nothing felt extraordinarily different, but it's just like a little different every day. And it feels weird to say when you have another person in your house. I mean, babies don't really do much for a really long time after birth. So it just felt a little different. It was more than a little, I would guess, but I was expecting, a bigger feeling of change, but it just felt right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of nice the way that it works that way. It's really like a slow transition period. Like you're just resting, taking care of this little sleeping, pooping thing. And then it changes and changes and changes quickly. Yeah. But
that was crazy. Can we tell poop stories here?
Of course. Oh.
So that was, I think that was one of my biggest accomplishments post-birth. I was the diaper guy. So I just did all the diapers because it was pretty much the only thing I could do. I couldn't feed her or any of that. So I did all the diapers. I thought I would ease into it, but the first one, Cailley was like, that's a poopy diaper. You got to do it. And I was like, okay. And so I, take the disposable off. It's that sticky poop in there.
The meconium.
Like, yeah. And it came off pretty clean. I'm like, all right, we're good. And then as I'm changing it, just more comes out. And I got the wet wipes. I'm just like, how much more? I was like, it is so weird. It is so tacky.
This. It's so funny.
I could literally just take a water wipe, pinch it, and pull it out.
Yeah. Those little buttholes are strong.
It's crazy. I mean, which honestly I think was amazing because then it was basically like 3 diapers worth and I got it in one go. So that's efficient.
Great. Jumping right in, right away, learning on the job.
Literally.
I think that was a big shock for me. I'm like, I thought I could warm up with like a pee diaper or something. No. We got a triple pooper.
There's so much poop in the first month. It's just like constant.
Well, isn't it all just like building in there in the womb? So they have to have a good couple of big poops that Ryan gets to tackle.
It's exciting. Welcome to the world.
Mm-hmm.
What was it like navigating Cailley's body can do certain things, you can do certain things. What was it like communicating about your roles shifting in the moment and how you can support each other?
It's a good question. I can't remember exactly like what conversations we had. I know I was on diaper duty just because that was all I could do. And so I'm like, whatever way I can help, that seems to be like, that was like my water bottle duty. I was diaper guy. So
from water boy to diaper guy.
It feels like a demotion, but I think it's a promotion.
Maybe a lateral move.
And that's the title of this episode.
Yeah. Like I said, everything just kind of changes so gradually. I didn't have much to do besides diapers for a while. And then, you get food from people. And so I didn't have to cook for a while. And eventually, I think I tried to cook a bit more. And things just kind of snowball, right? You just keep getting more and more things to do, and then I think you talk about dividing them up.
Mm-hmm. Did you ever get to a point where you kind of lost it? Like it's too overwhelming, all the changes happening so fast? Or did you feel like you could take it all on as it came?
Like 3 times a day, probably. Yeah. It's another wave. Like it just keeps coming and going, and some days it's like, oh man, this is a breeze. Like we could have 10 kids. And then some days it's just like, I get smoking now. I've never had a cigarette, but I know that would calm me down. But as far as any like tipping point, I don't know. I think there was a realization when you just keep adding more things. I think it was when we started giving our daughter solids. And I'm just like, all right, so we have to cook, feed her, clean her, clean the high chair. And I'm just like,
then there's food all over the floor.
I was like,
3 times a day.
I can't remember I don't even think we had a routine before the baby. It was just like, whatever we want to do, if there's all the time in the world. But I'm like, now I don't know how we have time to do anything. Everything's just so scheduled and regimented, and it works well. But yeah, it's just a lot more responsibilities.
Mm-hmm. Did you have?
Sort of.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh.
I thought a lot about my mom in the days afterwards, probably the hormones, and also just thinking about the person that birthed me. Did you experience that too, thinking about your mom or your dad and how you entered into this role of being a father? Did anything come up?
Yeah, for sure. I had a very complicated childhood. So my mom left my father when I was 6 weeks old. And I guess I'm still trying to get the story from her, but it seems like her family wasn't very receptive to like taking her in. So I ended up, I guess, growing up in like a homeless shelter for like a few months. And so there are times where I'm just like, how the heck did my mom do it? Because I have an older brother. He's 2.5 years older. I'm like, how does a single mom work and raise 2 kids in that environment?
Yeah. Wow.
I don't know. Yeah. Have you ever asked her like how?
It's funny. Yeah. I start asking more now because like, now that it's more applicable, I'm just like, how the heck? Like, first of all, like, how did no one take you in? Like, that's heartbreaking for me. And yeah, like, just how did you do it? I can't imagine the struggle, like even as it is. Like we have 2 parents and 1 kid. She had 1 parent and 2 kids. The math is skewed.
Yeah, it seems like an impossible task.
Yeah, and you have like this whole new perspective. It's so interesting for your like perspective of your parents to shift because you're a parent, and it's just like
I know. I cut them a little more slack now. But.
Yeah, there's like this more empathy or understanding, and it's less of a perspective of you as a child, but seeing them more as human and doing the best that they could do. And I mean, like 6 weeks, having a 6-week-old and a 2.5-year-old, that deserves some.
I know, 6 weeks. I'm like, how long was Cailley on bed rest for?
Yeah.
You're still not even healed at that point.
Wow.
Did you always want to be a parent? And if so, is it what you expected?
I think, in the grand scheme of things, like conceptually, I wanted to be a parent. I didn't expect it to like be real. I don't know how to describe it, but like, yeah, conceptually think so. I mean, I didn't think about it as much as my wife did. She was always like real serious about kids. And yeah, we finally got to a point, I guess a year before we started trying, where she was like, I think we should have a kid. And I'm like, yeah, I guess, like, yeah. Like I have always wanted one, but I just didn't expect it to like happen. So then I'm like, all right, well, let me put in some work, make myself a fully functional human being. And I think one of the best things I did was like, therapy for sure. But along with that, like trying to figure out what my values are. Like if I were to be a father, like what are my most important values? And so I think number 1 was like emotional, what is it? Intelligence. Yeah, emotional intelligence. So therapy, lots of books, that helped a lot. Another one was like financial security. So I finally learned about retirement and like all the 401ks and budgeting and all that. I think those were the big ones. And there's a lot of little things that pop up, but I think knowing your core values, like emotional intelligence, and that really helped me get to a point where I'm like, okay, I think I have my guiding light as a father, and I think I'm ready. And I think coming to a point where you realize you might not ever, personally, I don't think I'll ever feel ready. It's just the trust to take that jump and know you'll make the best decisions with your values in mind.
It must be both painful for yourself, trying to navigate that and look within to what fatherhood means to you, knowing your experience with your own dad, and really having to do that introspective work for yourself to show up for your daughter. I think she would, if she listened to this, she'd be really proud of you.
It's a big step to say, like, I need to sit down and understand my values. I don't think a lot of people do that, but I think it's huge.
I think that's been my biggest strength as a parent, is having like those core values. Because oh man, yeah, you prepare so much for your child to be born, and then it all gets so muddy so fast. Like, you're researching safe sleep, and it's like, well, now we can't have any blankets. And 20 years ago, like, you had to have blankets, and you can't be a belly sleeper. And it's like, you can't be a side sleeper. You got to be back. And there's just so much conflicting information out there, and I couldn't make sense of it. And so I think having those core values help guide you to make your decisions. That was the biggest difference for me now, like just being able to trust my gut. And if I make the wrong decision for the right reasons, I feel like I could live with that a little easier than trying to make the right decision, but it not being aligned with my values.
Wow, that's good insight.
Yeah, that's like one thing I really try and help parents do is to follow their gut instincts. And because people have really great instincts and it's so impossible to navigate all the information and everyone has an opinion, everyone, and they'll tell you. So it's so important. And it's amazing that you were able to find your way of navigating that.
It's hard. Yeah. I always prided myself. Like I'm a really good test taker. Even through Cailley's birth, I'm like, all right, here's what we do. I know the answers. Here's what we do. But yeah, when you're raising a child, it's less objective and it's really subjective. Like I'd love to be, Maria Montessori but like we don't share the same values. So it's nice being able to pick and choose the things you agree with without trying to uphold yourself to an unrealistic expectation.
Mm-hmm. It's so personal to you. Mm-hmm. People are so quick to give advice. Yeah. You have to take out all the noise. But then it's like you're a beginner, and so you sometimes need to know what to do. Like when they get sick for the first time, or it's such a strange experience being a beginner, but also having to follow your intuition. You don't see that very often, except in parenthood.
Yeah.
Where else do you see that?
And people parent so privately now. So you're not getting examples all around you. You're not like living with different generations of your family, or like really seeing firsthand like what other parents are going through. So there's so much that you don't, have examples for.
It's a good point. Our family is all on the East Coast and we're on the West Coast. So it was kind of a double-edged sword where it is, obviously I wish they could spend every day with her and grow up, like you're saying, all under one roof and all be a happy family, but also kind of not having that pressure to do things the way that your parents did. And you don't have to pass on those, not generational traumas, but like those traditions.
But that. I definitely see like the benefit of getting information by like being around more family, but also like I like living my own little life here, like seeing my family when we see each other. It makes it more special. It's not an everyday thing, but now your daughter's almost 1.
Yeah.
How is this time different from the newborn phase or the 6-month phase when you're introducing food? I imagine there's so many things that are different now.
She's walking.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, hot off the press.
That's
she's starting
a big change.
To stumble, walking, I think she took like 2 steps, so that counts. Yeah, it's different. Like her changes are a lot slower, but kind of bigger. Like walking, like that's a huge change, but it took months. Whereas in the early stages, everything's like happening so fast. Like it's hard to keep up day after day. It's like, what do you mean? Like broccoli was your favorite food yesterday. So I feel like I'm hitting a groove. I don't know. It's all been kind of fun. I'm lucky enough to have been able to take some leave. First, when my daughter was born, and then now right up until her first birthday. Oregon just passed like an Oregon paid leave. So I was able to take advantage of that for a few weeks, and it's just been amazing. This first year is just crazy.
Life turns sideways.
Yeah. I'm finally starting to I wouldn't say I'm well rested, but I'm not as sleep deprived.
Would you say you feel, now that you're at a year post-birth, you've integrated fully the role of parenthood into your life? Does that make sense?
Like my identity?
Yeah.
That's a great question. I was just thinking that. Do I introduce myself as a dad? Like, I don't know. I think that's just, obviously my daughter's a part of me. Like we're a family. Yeah, I don't know. I'm waiting to get my dad's certificate in the mail so I can add it to my title. But for sure. If you look at my phone, all the pictures are my daughter, and it's a lot of fun. And I love seeing some of her personality traits have stayed consistent, and then some of them are starting to change, and it's just fun to watch.
It makes me wonder if it's easier for a partner to hold on to their own identity outside of the role of dad or parent than it is for the person who gave birth, because I feel like motherhood and giving birth is such like a transformation of who you are. And I wonder, there's no way to truly compare the two.
Yeah, it is interesting. I'm curious to hear your perspectives. Do you think of yourself as a mom first, or?
I can't not think of myself as a mom first. It's all consuming. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think there's a really good question actually from one of the Instagram questions that speaks to this that I could answer a very different way, maybe, than you might. And that question is, for the listeners, we pooled our Instagram community if they had any questions for you specifically, Ryan, as a first-time dad. One of the questions is, did you feel like you lost a part of your identity?
I don't. Not yet. Like, I feel like everything's just kind of adding up. I mean, I've lost the basketball fan of me. My wife said I have to cut it down to one sport, so I chose baseball. But yeah, you have so many things that fill your time before parenthood. You can't, like, once you add in a child, obviously some things have to get left on the cutting room floor. But I don't know. I think it's just for me, it felt like a good way to realign myself and kind of think about, like, what are my favorite parts of my identity, I guess. And so that's definitely being a present parent and a photographer, which thankfully go very well hand in hand. So I don't know. I will say it's been harder than I thought it would be to, like, work and parent. I'm a very committed person. I'd love to just, commit to one thing and kind of stick to it and get to be the best at that one thing. So having to, like, kind of split my time and not, like, turn my brain off, but, like, switch to work mode or parent mode. And it's just, that one's been a struggle I'm still kind of wading through.
It's unrealistic to give all of yourself to parenting and give all of yourself to a job or an interest. It's just not possible. But it's like the standard, in this country that we all are supposed to uphold somehow.
And it is often very contradictory. Like, you often find if you want to be a present parent, that means you're not present at work or anywhere else. So you have to constantly try to get creative and figure out how to meet those values for yourself. It's so hard, right?
It's so hard. And knowing, like, making one decision is kind of like objectively making a decision on the other part. Like, if you want to spend more time with your child, that means not caring as much about your career. It's it's a tipping scale, and so it's kind of challenging.
We're having to figure out how to set boundaries for the first time.
Yeah, there was a lot of, I don't want to say pressure, but being the non-birthing partner and taking as much leave as I did, I felt a little guilty, I guess, in a way. People would be like, oh, well, like, why do you need to take off? You didn't go through birth or something. And no one said it, but I think in general, like, there's the societal pressure. I can only speak for myself as a man, but for other non-birthing partners, I wonder if it's the same.
Johnny felt that too, that guilt.
Which is so sad because, like, yes, your body's not, like, physically recovering, I guess, for one example, but you're
bonding with
your child who is a new human that you're trying to raise, and you're adjusting your entire lifestyle around having a new person in your family, and you're not getting sleep. So I feel like it just there shouldn't be that stigma, but there is.
Yeah. And you're giving water and changing diapers. And, like,
who would be the water boy?
Oh.
Yeah.
No, but truly, I mean, there should be no shame around that.
Johnny only ended up taking like 6 weeks of the whole time because he felt too guilty to take the whole 12 weeks. It's such a mind game that you have to play.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I thought if I didn't take all the time I could, I would just kind of be playing into that role. Mm-hmm. And, like, I want other people to see that, like, oh yeah, like, why shouldn't I take time off? Like, having a new child is an incredible thing. Like,
yeah,
I want to see as much of it as I can. Right. So it's kind of where my scale is tilted.
And you're sticking to your value of emotional intelligence, which is, I'm not making other people, or this guilt is actually other people. Like, I can take this time for myself because I want to be with my family. That's emotional intelligence, not letting other people's stuff prevent you from doing things that you want to do.
It was tricky. Even this second round of leave I took off, I was like trying to sprinkle it around. I'm like, what if I just take Thursdays and Fridays off? And that way it's not as big of a disruption. Like, but then I wouldn't have been able to, and it would have expired. And I'm like, all right, I'll just take a huge chunk at the end. I'm really grateful I did. I got to see her first steps.
Oh.
Like, I can't imagine missing that.
That's amazing. I'm curious, Sophie, how you would answer that question.
Oh,
if you want to.
Yeah. So
did you feel like you lost part of your identity?
Yes. I'm still working through that part. I think a big part of my identity prior to being pregnant was independence and doing things when I want, how I want, on my own terms. And I can't do that. I have to be dependent on my partner, and I have somebody who depends on me with everything. And it's slowly getting less and less, but I'm trying to learn how to practice being patient with what my own needs are and allowing myself to be angry about that. But also, it's like just getting creative with ways that I can practice that, but also an acceptance that I can't.
It's a complicated formula.
I'm still working on it.
Yeah.
But I think it helps knowing that I can do so many fun things now with my toddler. It was really, really hard for me when my child was born to about 6 months because you're stuck at home, napping constantly. You can't do
Your body
things.
is so in need constantly.
Yeah, I was wondering, you had your child in December. And for those who don't know, that 3 months in Portland from like December to March, it's
Will not be doing that again if I can plan for that.
okay.
Yeah.
I was curious. Yeah, that's got to be really challenging, not seeing the sun and just limited daylight and all that. That's one of my like big helpers, I guess, is when getting sunlight. So I was curious, and then getting out on walks in the rain. Like I wouldn't want to do that.
Yeah. Even the summer now in warm weather, I can go outside on a bike ride and go and take her with me and feel like I have this freedom and, I don't know, the agency to go do stuff that I want to do with her, of course.
It's kind of
Does
fun.
that answer the question?
Yeah,
I'm still
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think I resonate with what you're saying. Is like, I feel like at this point now that my daughter's almost a year, I'm excited to try and like show her the things that I enjoy. Like I took her to a photography exhibit a few months ago, and like, you know, that's not really something that we would normally do. And my wife stayed home, so it's nice being able to just have that bonding time, and you still get to show that you're an interesting person.
Yeah.
Not just, you know, dad who changes your diaper.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're like sharing a different part of your identity with your child, which I think is important.
Yeah, and we have evidence now that that's not too far away in the future, or you can have some pockets of that. So it's not so
It's like
final.
light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah. When I first had Ruby, I was like, what have I done?
My life is this now.
Yeah, my life is this now. But I'm slowly reintegrating. Like that old self is still in me, and it's just being creative, trying to find new ways to do that. Sounds like you are too. It's like going to the museum or taking pictures of her, or you guys do a lot of traveling.
We do, surprisingly. Yeah. I mean, a big part of it is that our family's on the East Coast. So somehow it ends up like, we always say like, all right, we'll go like once every year or two, but somehow we end up going every 6 months. And then in between, we like to do little trips because otherwise we just get so stir crazy. Growing up, it was never something I was able to do. So now that I'm an adult, I'm like, traveling's cool. And, and I don't want to stop. So like, we'll just take the baby.
Yeah. So you're living your life as you would with a baby.
Yes. And then the 2 weeks after we get back and her sleep schedule's wrecked, I'm like, never doing that again.
Yeah. Worth it.
Yeah.
Mostly.
Yeah. It was really fun. We got to see the eclipse.
Oh, nice.
That was a good opportunity. I don't know if she saw it. I think she was interested in things getting darker, but she didn't look up.
But you remember that.
Yeah.
as
Of course.
a memory
Yeah.
Yeah.
with her.
You experienced
together.
that with her, yeah.
I know. Now I get to tell her, like, no, you saw one.
Should we read another question from the Instagram questions? Yep. What has been the hardest adjustment in your relationship to your partner?
That's a good
Would
question.
just like to say that this is coming from also a first-time dad.
Oh.
I think our biggest adjustment has been like division of labor, which is kind of stereotypical, but yeah, it's really hard. And I think it's something we're still trying to figure out, where you don't know if it's better to assign jobs or tasks or like hours. Like, there's just so many options, and I think we each kind of have an idea of how certain things should get done, and very challenging for sure. Something we're still working on.
Are you able to, we talked about you balancing your job and your parenting parts of you. Are you able to spend time on just your relationship with your partner ever? I imagine that's hard to, especially when you're in this mode of like, we got to get all the tasks done. How do we split up the tasks? So you're kind of like living together and parenting together and working or not working. And then it's like that can easily get overlooked unless you like intentionally make time for it.
Yeah, you're totally right. It's a struggle for sure. Because, we have like us time, baby time, family time. And it's like, there's only room for two. So like, how do you balance? Essentially, like, we kind of just live for bedtime. And then once bedtime's over, we get to sit down, relax, and kind of talk to each other. Sometimes we just watch bad TV, but it's definitely different. And it's a lot harder to be more intentional, especially because we don't have much family out here. So you don't get that free babysitter.
Yeah.
It's something we recognize is very important, and we're trying to make more time available for our relationship now that I think our baby's a little less dependent.
It's hard. Yeah.
Yeah, I love my wife. You know? I just want to like do fun stuff with her, and then like very rarely we'll get out by ourselves and have a date, and then we just end up talking about our daughter the whole time. We're like, oh, it'd be so fun if she was here.
Isn't it cool that that's like you have this thing in common with this one other person? There's nobody else in the world that has the same. You get to be these parents together.
It is. It's a very special, unique bond. And I wouldn't want anyone else raising my daughter. My wife, she's like a professional mom.
She really is.
She's got so many qualifications and certifications. And like, if you couldn't hire a better mom than my wife, which sometimes is a little challenging for me because I'm trying to like trust my gut, but then I'm like, but like she knows.
Do you feel more pressure more pressure to show up as well as she does as a parent?
No, I think I've learned I can't. So I just try and play my role. I mean, stereotypically, but I'm kind of the I wouldn't say the fun parent. That's so mean. The more loose parent. What's the word for that? Pushover. I let the baby do dangerous things.
I think it's good to have that balance.
Yeah.
I think it's important.
Yeah, I read a lot about that. Evolutionarily, like fathers do play a big role. They're a little rougher on the kid, which is a benefit. And so I think allowing myself to be rough, I think it's a benefit that I can provide. It's nice to have different rules, I guess, with different parents, but we're united on the parts that matter the most.
The big stuff, yeah.
Yeah.
Do you want to ask?
I keep wanting to say something. The part with the independence piece, like there's something so healing, or I don't know what the word is, but learning to depend on each other. Actually, Garrett and Jules talked about that in their episode. It's so against everything we've learned in our culture and capitalism and this hyper independence all the time that
it takes real effort to lean on someone else.
It's
but then you have to
in the beginning, but the payoff is like, wow, like you can learn so much about yourself and lean on that so much for support, like real support, that family unit.
You're forced to figure it out.
You're forced to figure it out, yeah.
Yeah, that's very true.
Clunky way to tie in a few things there.
I love it. I've been trying to cut myself a little more slack lately because I feel like at times you try to do everything correctly or like perfect. And I think there's a quote out there where it's like, done is better than perfect. So it's like, you might as well just get it done. And like, you know, if you miss some crumbs on the floor, like we don't have to vacuum today. Like, we just sweep up and just get it done.
Yeah.
If you like focus on all the things, there wouldn't be enough time in the day. So you have to like let some things slide to like spend time with your kid or your wife.
That's been a surprisingly challenging part because you have standards.
Yeah.
And then you have a kid and like you still have your standards. Like, do I have to adjust my standards or adjust my effort?
Like letting go of control all the time.
Where are you on that question for yourself?
Oh, I think I'm at the part of letting go of my standards, but I don't know if my wife agrees. I think that's part of our division of labor issues. But
that's so interesting. That's not really the task or the chore that you're doing, but more in your head of how you regulate yourself in a clean environment or not clean environment, how you're just in your body okay with things.
It's really hard too. And we both grew up differently too. Like I grew up with mess and chaos and I'm comfortable in that environment where it really affects her. And so knowing that things might be okay by my standards, but you know, putting in a little bit of extra effort so that the whole house is comfortable, I think it's been a struggle for me, but something I'm trying to work on.
And your daughter will benefit too from having those two perspectives and tolerances for things. Because she can learn then that there's different ways of doing things.
Yeah.
You know?
It's true.
So we have one more question from Instagram that's
We'll see how
We'll
it
see
goes.
how it goes. What do you think of male seahorses giving birth like a baby seahorse cannon? Shout out to Griffin. Thank you for this question.
I can vision it in my head. Beautiful. Funny enough, like one of my childhood dreams was to own seahorses.
Interesting.
But then I learned that they're saltwater fish and it's incredibly difficult to maintain. I don't know. If I had to have given birth, I think we would still be waiting. I don't know. I'd be trying to do some more exercises.
It kind of ties into us talking about whether you would take on some of the pain if
Yeah.
you were able to. It's like, would you take on the whole birth?
I don't know. I think I'm a very sensitive man. My wife could handle the pain surprisingly well for someone who's like never broken a bone, like never really gotten injured. So I had no idea how she would do, but she gave birth like it was, like not a walk in the park, but maybe like a afternoon at the DMV.
Do you see her differently after this?
I mean, not differently, but I do think like, wow, she's stronger than I realized. Yeah, I don't know if I see her differently. I think seeing her give birth is amazing. Like, she's definitely stronger than I realized, but I think she's still that beautiful girl I swiped left with on Tinder. Or right? Which one is it? I forget.
Left.
All right,
Is
there
it?
we go.
I don't
so.
know. I never used Tinder. I thought it was right.
Swipe right?
I think it's right.
Really?
Yeah,
Yes is right.
I think so. Sasha?
Been out of the game.
No.
Fact check.
Yes, right.
Oh, okay, swipe right.
Anything before we transition to our last two questions that we ask every guest? Anything else that you would like your future self to know about Ryan right now on May 4th, 2024? Or anything about your birth experience or anything that we haven't asked that you'd like to have recorded?
Ooh, I like it. I think it's worth mentioning, like, I'm still so unsure of so many things. Like, I thought you'd have a baby. Like, by all objective measures, we have our lives put together pretty well. I wake up some days, I'm just like, what am I doing?
I'm glad I'm not the only one.
And I wonder when that, I don't know if it goes away. When we were back east, we asked Cailley's grandma, we're like, do you feel like you're in your 80s? She's like, no, like my body does. But yeah, it's crazy to think about. And like you're saying, maybe seeing our parents in a new light, like we're really just taking it day by day. Like I thought I'd be a lot more sure of myself.
It's kind of like adulthood in general. Like as a kid, you think all adults have like everything figured out. And I don't think anybody has anything figured out, especially in parenthood.
Yeah, some
Yeah.
people make it seem like they do a lot more than others. But it's,
And like social media and like people presenting perfect lives doesn't help.
what do you think being a parent ultimately means? If you could put it into a sentence.
No pressure.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
And I can think about it too.
For me, it felt like trying to raise somebody better than I had been raised, which might not be the healthiest view. And better is very subjective. And I think it's a pretty common feeling is like people like when they have a kid, they want to give them the good parts of their life and kind of shield them from the bad, or at least prepare them more appropriately. But yeah, it's heavy. What about you?
I think it's to love somebody unconditionally.
And do your best,
And
maybe.
do your best, yeah.
It is true. It's a different love. Like we've gotten married. We've each had separate children. Getting married is such a conditional love, I guess. You just feel this overwhelming love and you're just like, I choose you as my partner and I'm ready to ride or die. But then having a child, it's unconditional and you can't take it back. So it's interesting perspective. How do you feel like about that?
That you can't just
Like having
put it back.
like falling in love with your husband versus having your baby. I was like,
Yeah, there are definitely conditions to finding a romantic partner for sure. And you think in the beginning, I was like, oh, now if you really think about it, if my partner did certain things, that would change my love. And I don't know if he listens to this, but
Be careful, John.
yeah, he does
he
pretty
starts
great.
unicycling. Ooh.
Ooh, unicycling is fine. What if they like, hurt you in some way?
Right.
Yeah.
But then what if your child grows up and does that?
I know. What
Not
if your
all
child...
parents love their kids unconditionally.
I know.
But I think when you do, it's impossible to imagine any different.
Yeah.
But it's the greatest gift to actually love your kid unconditionally.
I'm trying to give that gift. And I'm also trying to give that gift in my relationship with my partner, too. Mm-hmm. But it's way harder to do that.
It's more of a choice.
Yeah, it's more of a choice.
It's pretty crazy. We call it both love. It's like, it just feels so different to me. But
yeah, it's so interesting for me to hear because we've been on the fence about having a kid for years. And everyone's like, it's a totally different love that you could not imagine. And literally, there's no possible way for me to understand unless we make that decision. But hearing all these perspectives obviously adds to our pile of information that we go off of to try and make that decision.
It is crazy, though. It's a decision. Like, we're lucky enough to, plan and have this daughter that we're wanting to have. And it was such a choice. Like, it's crazy. And then, you just have to love them however they come out.
Whoever they grow up to be also.
You said something earlier.
Me?
Yeah. I just think it's also really valuable to have your perspective as not yet having kids and then to have my perspective as having had kids because you can't go back. I can't remember what I thought.
There's no way to be in both of those places.
The love that you have for your child motivates you to do certain things behaviorally that my partner doesn't. Like, I'm not going to sacrifice sleep all the time, every day.
Oh, my God.
You do so much for your child because you love them. Or you feel guilty if you don't do it. Maybe guilt is also a motivator, too.
I mean, yeah. It's kind of talked about this before, too. Like, you think back, as a parent, you think back on when you could do anything with your time and how freeing that would feel right now if you could go back to that and just choose to do what you want to with your time. But then my perspective is I still have the guilt. It's very different, of course, but like it's not me coming back from your place and being like, oh, this is great. Like, of course, it's a huge luxury as someone without a child to be able to do what I want to with my time. I don't have the pulling back and forth of like, oh, I can't make autonomous decisions just for myself. Like, I haven't experienced that. So there's no way to like come back to where I am and do it differently. Yeah. And there's no way for me to like truly comprehend, how different things will be if I choose to have a child. And I've spent so much time with people with kids.
What would you tell somebody who's on the fence about having children?
Just wait. I mean, like, I think if you're not fully committed, just wait until you're sure one way or the other.
But then you can't ever be sure.
Yeah.
That's
you
fair.
Even said that today.
Until you feel...
Yeah. I think you have
know.
to be like, not sure, but willing enough to like take what comes.
Yeah.
I guess just think about the reasons why you would want to have kids and maybe the reasons you're a little hesitant and try and work through those and either work on them yourself or bring up your concerns to your partner.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then there's also the layers of like the biological clock ticking. And then if you're in a relationship where you can't rely on that biology to happen.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
I do think...
accidentally, maybe you're playing.
Oh, we can't. Yeah, we can't. And being in a queer relationship, we can't just try and see if it happens. It has to be very intentional and costly.
Yeah.
So we really have to be sure.
Yeah.
You got to get sponsored by Carrot.
Yeah. I know. We've been talking about that. Sasha's been looking at jobs that offer Carrot, like, which is sad.
Oh my God, I know. Yeah.
Health insurance in general. How do you pick a plan that has the lowest cost for giving birth? And none of them are low unless you're on OHP.
That was a hard decision for us to make. It wasn't hard because Cailley really wanted a home birth, but knowing that if we were to have gone with our insurance provider, Kaiser, that baby would have been $100. And our home birth was not.
That's sad too. I know so many people who are just like, well, we got to save up for 10 years because I want a home birth. What? That's ridiculous, like.
Yeah. It was interesting, my wife's perspective, because, she wanted a free birth and then she wanted a home birth. And it all came down to like, she basically just wanted to deliver her child like in her ideal comfort place. Mm-hmm. And like,
which everyone deserves.
So obvious. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Like we should be treating people equitably, right? Mm-hmm. Like not just like they're in and out of a doctor's office, but
Lots to say about that too. Should we transition to our last 2 questions?
Yeah.
Can I ask some?
5. Yeah.
Oh, please.
Nice. Put you on the hot spot.
We don't really get questions.
Love it. I guess I have a few. I'm just curious, like your perspective on fatherhood. For me, I think it was really difficult finding resources for new fathers. A lot of it seems like grief related or religious. So I mean, I still haven't found like a father group, just like dads to chat. And it seems like there's a lot of mother groups out there, but they're all kind of fragmented. And curious how you guys feel like a sense of community.
How have I found community in motherhood? I would say community is everything. It's having this relationship with Cailley down the street is everything. To know that there's somebody else in the same life phase as me that's so accessible has been such a gift. And to start like a mom group, I needed that so much at the time. And just like people to go chat with, because you're at home, your child can't talk back with you. So you're just feeling really, and Johnny went back to work, so I was feeling really isolated. So I think I need community in different ways now than I did back then. And I know that there's a huge gap in what mom groups, how many there are, and there's just so much more available and accessible and not a lot for dads or even other relationship configurations or identities. It's like mom groups, like basically like white, younger, female, cisgender moms. Like that's what's out there. So if you're looking for something, I mean, even in the mom groups that there are available, I felt limited in the ones that I could choose. And so having somebody like Cailley who has a lot of similar parenting values in mothering, that's been a gift. Yeah.
Yeah, we need more of that for dads and partners too. I can't think of any off the top of my head, but I know I've seen dad groups or partner groups in Portland before, whether that was like an ongoing thing or like at certain times. But if I'm going to go in and see if I can find some, and if we can find some, we'll link it on this episode because it's important.
I know a few have gotten kind of disrupted by COVID. And so
I believe that,
haven't really come
that
back.
could be what I'm thinking of.
One of them, I think, it's not Baby Blues, but they're like partnered with Baby Blues. Yeah, there's a dad group. But again, that's like kind of when you like Baby Blue, like, I think that skews towards
Yeah. I've had the thought of like starting a group like that.
You should.
It's so hard because there's so many different parts, so many different types of people who have different needs. And so it's hard to be like, I'm going to show up for this group of people who have needs, but it's crossed my mind to have like a partner/dad group. So maybe I'll do that.
Maybe you could start one, like
don't add to my list. But yeah, I love
it. Worked for you,
Sophie. Yeah. I think the best person to be able to lead that is somebody who knows how much it's needed. And you've been there before. You are still in it.
That's fair.
You cannot not be in it anymore.
Oh. All right. If any of you are in Southeast Portland, DM the show.
Yeah. And it's like, I think that if I were to run one, I couldn't have it be exclusively for dads just because I'm not and can never be a dad. Right. But like, I feel like if people were into like partners in general, then we could.
Yeah. I think non-birthing partners are a similar group. It's all about like, I mean, a lot of it, I think, is just like, how can you support your partner who is giving birth and going through these physiological changes? Then a lot of it is like finding out your identity or your role. It's hard to beat a mom, but.
And like you said in the beginning, you were seeking out spaces where you could talk about your experiences in loss, but like in general, I feel like we need that for all of life's transitions. So just having like other people to talk to about that experience would be so helpful.
And there's parenting groups like at the Selwood Community House, but
Nurture Circle.
Yeah, but I feel
it's
like
just another mom group.
Right, exactly. It's
which is it that has. I feel like we've gotten to this point for a reason because like moms have needed so much support, and so it's like we can celebrate the fact that there are so many groups available to moms and people who give birth, and say also we need more. We need more for partners?
It's hard. I feel like we're at a new age in society where we are recognizing that fathers play an important role in
And they always
developing a
have,
child.
too.
Right.
Yeah.
But we used to be able to skate on by and just get drunk at work and come home and go to bed. But
Yeah. With dinner waiting for you.
exactly. But yeah, having that, like you're saying, as an identity, like I do feel like a dad, but it's hard. Maybe it just doesn't seem like society recognizes me as a dad, or it just kind of feels like you're kind of going at it alone. But
And there's also that cultural influence of women have an easier time, and they've been conditioned to be more vulnerable and open up and share feelings and check in with each other. It's like we've been socially conditioned that way, and you have to be strong all the time and not show your feelings. And that's still very much part of our culture.
Yeah.
So until we break away from that.
I think we're like mid-cultural shift. There's so many men of our generation who are like becoming aware of problems, you know, like toxic masculinity or wanting to show up more as parents than the generation before. So things are shifting, but like we don't have all the necessary support for that. And there's still stigmas left over, you know, like you feeling judged for taking paternity leave.
yeah, it's hard. I feel like it's kind of just extremes where it's either postpartum depression as a non-birthing partner, and like there's groups for that. But then aside from that, it's like there's not really any in between. But I want to talk about my daughter and watch UFC. You know?
So
I
start
contain
that group.
multitudes.
Yeah. There has to be somebody to start them.
Let's make it happen. We'll make it happen somehow. Well, we do have 2 questions that we like to ask everyone.
Okay.
The first one is, what advice would you give to someone who's about to, we normally say who's about to give birth, but maybe a dad or a partner who's about to become a parent?
Or support somebody
Through
giving
birth. Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like all my suggestions have been sprinkled out. But
Yeah, they have.
Bring your partner water. Take all the leave you can. Bond with your child. Be intentional. Oh, that's been really hard. I've been trying to cut down on my screen time in front of my daughter. Difficult.
We're all addicted.
And do the diapers. After, you know, the baby's born, there's not a whole lot that the non-birthing partners can do, but you can do the diapers.
So is it kind of like accept that you're on diaper duty?
Embrace it, you know?
Embrace what you have control over.
Yeah. I mean, that was, I don't know if I'd call it bonding time, but like, yeah, that's kind of like bonding time.
Yeah.
Because your kids just kind of, someone called it like a potato phase. It's when your baby's just a potato. They're just not doing anything. They're just there.
Yeah.
For like the first few months.
But there is so much bonding there. It's like the art to which you wipe a baby's bottom. There can be so much love and care. They remember that, how they've been touched on their body and felt somebody's presence and care is remembered, I think.
Yeah.
Like you could do it really aggressively or like softly. Right?
Oh, yeah. I learned the trick, the wet wipe on the forearm so that it's not cold.
Yeah.
And then obviously front to back. I learned that one.
Yep. That's good. Okay. What is a funny moment from your experience as a father that
makes you laugh?
Yeah, makes you laugh. Yeah.
From fatherhood or the birth experience, something that stands out that's funny to you?
I think a lot of it is just having these like moments of clarity when you realize like how different your lives are. Like there was one night my wife it was after our daughter went to bed, and she just turns to me and she's like, no one ever tells you parenting is like eating ice cream alone quietly with the lights off because you don't want to wake your child. And it's like, man, how did we get here? But also loving that moment. It's very strange.
It's special and could shift into like hiding where you're eating ice cream so that your older child doesn't see.
I have to start doing that now. Ruby knows what the ice cream box looks like, so I have to put it in a other container like this.
I've definitely, as a nanny, like hid around the corner eating a snack, and then I'm like peeking out so they don't see me.
My biggest shame, but also kind of accomplishment. We were at a birthday party once, and we had like chocolate cake. And the kid comes up and he's like, "Oh, what's that?" And I'm just like, "Oh, you wouldn't like it. It's spicy." And he's like, "Oh, okay."
You lied to the child.
I love it. It was,
do you think
dad
that
hacks?
Yeah, you got it. Somehow you think you won't, but then you do. You have all these little like things that you do.
I know I still feel guilty about it, but in the moment, I was very proud of myself.
Maybe you needed the cake. No, I'll live. All right. Anything else that you feel like is important?
Thanks for having me on, giving
a
platform for the other half.
Yeah. Thank you so much for talking about miscarriage and normalizing that, and also the everything that comes with that. And your perspective on birth and pregnancy and fatherhood is super valuable too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah. It was really great. We really appreciate having your perspective and meeting you and hanging out.
Yeah,
thank you.
Thank you.
Bearing Birth is available on all major podcast streaming services. We invite you to subscribe as well as follow us on Instagram at Bearing Birth Podcast.